just in itself, the shattering of the vessels is an amazing concept. That in the creation process, at a certain point, the Ein Sof decided that this process would involve, at a certain point, a shattering, a breaking down of the light into photons, as opposed to big light. So that's an incredible feat for the Ein Sof. Where does the Ein Sof hide? He hides in a world where he's created an effect where basically his light is broken down in such a way that even though the world itself is godly, but God is hidden in the world. So there's this paradox that we won't go try and deal too much with. But the fact that the whole world is taking place within God, within Ein Sof. There's no one word for it. It's a system that's of a consciousness that permeates every single square centimeter or whatever you want, or quark of existence, with all the multiplicity and all of the incredible multidimensionality of reality of everything. Like all this is taking place within God. That's the simple of it. But in order to do that, and even though that Hashem, the Ein Sof, could have done it in 1 second, in one act, it did it in a number of stages to create the world in a way that there would be almost a logic to how one stage led to the one below it, and to the one below it, and the one below it, and we could then work back up the same ladder that we came down. Right? We came down unconscious because we were just molecules, and we were even the sheep and the fruits on the trees. We've been everything, right? And yet we were never conscious as we are now. And even this is nothing compared to what consciousness is. So we have to work ourselves up from where we are now into full consciousness. And the world is poised for that. The world is ready for that, for human beings, for humanity to attain consciousness. That's what the Messianic age is described at. But most people describe the Messianic age from the outside. Oh, Mashiach's going to come, he's going to save us, and the whole world's going to be great. Yeah, but wait a second, like, what do we have to do, and what's our part in this? Is there something called the Messianic consciousness, which is the consciousness of Ein Sof as it comes into our vessels and transforms us? And how will that process take place, and how will it unfold? And that's what a lot of Kabbalistic texts go into, and it means, yes, like the Ramchal says, it'll unfold in time, but as the Baal Shem Tov says, it unfolds in consciousness. It doesn't have to be that we have to go anywhere and be anywhere else than where we are. We can have it now. So each one has his little corner of how to deal with these amazing concepts. In the meantime, we live in a world which was purposely created through a series of shatterings, of creating lower and lower dimensionalities. And in a sense, that sounds cosmological. I mean, in other words, that's like, wow, stars and explosions and all that, in order to create a world that was cool enough for human beings to dwell on it, in these bodies, these amazing bodies, and to see these flowers, and to see these tables and the trees and our organs. Wow, what delicacy, what amazing perfection, in a sense. What usually is not dealt with is what we're going to deal with today. Anybody didn't get a copy of this? Please, who didn't get? Raise your hand and we'll pass it to you. This book here, called Leshem Shov Achlama, is by this rabbi. He was born in 1840. He lived in Russia, White Russia, and he was quite a loner. That's how he wrote these four huge books that he wrote. He didn't have like a lot of students hanging around him and asking him questions. He did it all inside himself. Rav Avram Yitzhak Kook HaKohen learned with him. And actually, at a certain point, when the Rabbi Kook was able to, as a chief rabbi of Israel, so he brought this man here. And the last 2 years of his life, he lived in Israel. Rav Aryeh Levine, married his daughter. So he's the father-in-law of Rabbi Aryeh Levine. Aryeh Levine wrote the biography about Rabbi Shlomo Elyashiv, known by the name of his books, the Leshem Shvov Achlama. So Rabbi Elyashiv,
is based a lot on Rav
Rabbi Kook is, yeah. So this was, and it's interesting to see how one says it one way and one says it the other way. Rav Kook is not outwardly Kabbalistic, but he's definitely Kabbalistic. He's definitely coming from a very deep place, very, very, very large, expanded. So what the Leshem, or Rabbi Shlomo Elyashiv, did was he expanded our view of our existence. And he went out and he said, you really can't know and understand what earth life is if you don't see it from a higher perspective. And then you come back with that. That's what the prophets did. That's what their experiences were. The Kabbalah is the tradition that comes out of prophecy, and that is just the transmission that's been developed through the prophetic teachings and beyond. That we have. So the Kabbalah is really basically still a misunderstood teaching on the planet. It has a lot to say to every human being. And one of them is, what is our place here? What is this time that we're living in? What is this place that we're living on? What is our mission here? What is the clarity of how consciousness can become, as we said, come to its fruition? So one of the ways that he deals with things is he brings like 25 sources for the idea that he's just about to tell us. He wants to make sure that we know that he didn't make this stuff up. So these first few pages here are some sources that he brings at one point. And the title of this page is Nora Alila. It's based on a verse in Psalm 66. The first time you see this verse here is the bottom of page 1. You can look at the English directly. This is the Midrash. The Midrash quotes the verse, and Yosef was brought down to Mitzrayim. In other words, he was sold by his brothers. He was sold a number of times after that subsequently. And then he was brought to Egypt to be sold. So the Midrash says, this is what is meant by another verse that's written in the Psalms. In other words, the Midrash very often goes from the verse that it's about to comment on into another verse, and then comes back full circle and shows how the two are connected. The Midrash is a very special way of learning. It's the ancient repository of Kabbalistic teachings before Kabbalah took its more modern form. It's called homiletic, but it's not just. Imagine it. It's very profound. So the ideas that we're going to deal with today are very radical. So the rabbis say this is what is meant by another verse. Come see the works, the operations of Elohim. In Hebrew, lichu ur'u. Go and see, or come and see. Mif'alot Elohim. The operations or the works of Elohim. And we know that Elohim is the name of God that represents what? Justice, judgment, the necessity of man doing something within a smaller, constricted place to be able to come to greatness, which is the level of God's mercy. So the two never work apart from each other, but the world as we live in, as we know that the first chapter of Genesis is exclusively uses only this name, Elohim. And even in verse 4 of chapter 2, the first time that the name Yud-Kei Vav-Kei appears in the Bible, so we know that it's within a context of Elohim, because this world is a world of Elohim, of boundaries, of definitions, of delineation, of law and order, of right and wrong. On the deeper level, the Yud-Kei Vav-Kei is here. You can contact Elohim at any point in your life from anywhere you are. If you've done the worst things in the world, you can come into contact. But the structure is an Elohim world. Now we say then that when this world has done its job, we will go into a Yud-Ke Vav-Ke world, into the higher world, the university, after the 6th grade that we go into, after this school. And we come into the higher level that was there the whole time, that preceded our world. And that's the context within which our world exists, which is very often mostly identified with Hashem's love, the Creator's love. And then retroactively, we'll understand why we had to go through this school of hard knocks, and why this, what's in the East is sometimes called samsara, illusion, the cycle of births and deaths, which we call the 7 lower sphirot, and then come into the higher place. And we know that we'll understand that this world was a corridor for our souls to come down into the lower world, like it says in the Haggadah, Vayered Yaakov Mitzrayma, Anus al Pi Adibor. Yaakov was forced to go down to Mitzrayim. Esav got his inheritance in this world, but Yaakov, in order to get Israel, had to go to Egypt first. Egypt is the depths, the double binds of a world that tries to tear you apart. And if you make it through there, then you become worthy of Israel, of Yashar El, of straight to God. So the idea of coming down. Somebody else knocking? You can open it more.
Maybe put some here to keep it open.
Yashar El, straight to God. Also, Ish Ra'el, he who has seen God. Yashir El, he who sings to God, he who sings, who resonates with God. Sar El, minister of God. Israel is a very important concept. It's not just the Jewish people are an embodiment of that until the time when all mankind becomes Yisrael. We're not an exclusive club that says that nobody else can get in. At the end, on the contrary, we hold that everybody is invited, but we have to elevate. Okay, so where was I? So we have this verse. This is Lechu ur'u mifalot Elohim. Nora alila al bnei adam. So you have here the phrase Nora alila. He is Nora alila. Nora means awesome, and alila has been used historically as alilat dam, a blood libel. Well, what's that doing in a verse that God interacts with us as in terms of alila? So it says basically the simple translation, he's awesome in bringing libel, in bringing liability upon the children of men. He created the world in such a way that it's like the movie has some really bad parts in it. And until you get to the end of the movie, like you're complaining and saying, like, why did you make this world? We could have done a better job. So the midrashim that we'll learn in preparation for the text of the lesson are a radical approach. Usually the 99.9% of Judaism is you are responsible for whatever you've done. Your life circumstances are taken into account, mitigating circumstances. You had a hard life. You didn't have anybody love you. So you're judged accordingly. But the basic is that each human being is responsible for their actions. Even somebody with really dangerous inclinations, if they really want to, maybe they can control themselves completely, but if you want to, you can control yourself somewhat. And that effort that you put into it is taken into account by heaven. So our inner lives are really shakuf, they're really transparent to heaven. We live in a double world where what's going on down here, where all we know is what's going on down here, but there's an equivalent upper world where everything is seen one-way mirrors looking down. They know us. If a person would know that, usually it's used to scare you, but really it's because they care. We are really the sparks of higher souls that have been sent down into this world in order to do something that's very difficult. There's so much to say, I have to be careful. Don't overflow too much. It's ridiculous because the only real way to learn these things is one-on-one, and over a period of time where there's no rush and there's no sense that I'm going to miss out if I don't, you can ask, you can listen, you can come back, you can think about it. This is a teaching that's like, so I'll slow down. So this is this amazing thing called Nor Alila, that most of the time, 99.9% of Judaism or Torah as we know it is responsibility for what we do. So this is this little peek into a world where God says, I actually am the one who set up the situation. And it's, for some of us, it's not a big novel idea. But what we're going to deal with here is the profundity of it, and how that after all is said and done, what you and I do is important, but it will be done with a different level of consciousness. We have an ability to really affect reality. So what the Kabbalah does in order to give me that, to empower me, to give me the reality check that I need, is takes me outside, above the rules of this world, to when those rules were not even activated yet, and there was a level before. In a sense, is one of the point at one point the lesson is going to say that you cannot understand this world except if you have an understanding that everything that's happening here is me'olam asher hayam lefanenu, that everything that's happening right here, right now in this world is coming from a world that preceded ours, or a level of existence that preceded ours. Now, when I saw Star Wars, and I saw The Matrix, and I read Lord of the Rings, but when I saw the movie, these 3 movies, and there are probably even more movies, because movies are awesome. They're real teaching methods. They're real deep ideas. But Star Wars, for instance, was one of the first where that whole war was taking place in an epic before our world. Anybody remember that? That's how Star Wars is. Yeah, it's far away, and it's from a time prior to us. Matrix has its own metaphor, but it's very important. The Lord of the Rings in the movie, it starts with a war scene where these very powerful armies fighting each other outside of a fortified palace or castle, and then the one who has the ring on falls dead, and his ring falls off. I'm pretty sure, and that ring becomes, now the next scene is jumps to Bilbo in these Hobbit land, and it's like nice and cool, and there's wagons, and Gandalf visits once in a while, but that whole epic is now forgotten, and all this is this ring, right? But this is a power ring. So what's going to happen now within the framework of this now new world is going to be affected by what this ring is and where it came from and what happened. So that idea that everything that's happening in our world, in your life and in my life, is predicated on a prior thing that the Kabbalah generally calls shattering of the vessels. But what the lesson is going to do here is going to change the language a little bit, and he's going to open us up to another understanding. Just a little bit of the Midrash on page 1, we're going to read. Maybe the top Midrash first. There's an appointed time for everything, the first entry, an appointed time for every purpose under the heaven. King Solomon said, there's an appointed time for everything and a point in time for every purpose. There's an appointed time for everything. There was a pre-appointed time for Adam to enter the garden and a pre-appointed time for him to depart from there. Well, that implies that something was going to go wrong and that it was already programmed that something was going to go wrong, right? There was a pre-appointed time for Noah to enter the ark, meaning to say that there was going to be a necessity for an ark to be built, which means that mankind had gone down the tube so long that he was forced to build an ark. All that is implied in the fact there's a pre-appointed time for Noah to go into the ark. So all this pre-appointed, predetermined, this level that God is omniscient, and for an infinite omniscient God to have anything less than total omniscience would be a joke anyway. So, but you usually don't hear about it. So that's why this is the radical teaching that you need in order to have another level of free will than we have when we're totally unconscious.
With the shattering of the vessels, was the pre-appointed time because the light was going to have like a velocity to keep going deeper and deeper and deeper into like coarseness? And is this why it was there was like a trajectory to it, and that it bottomed out at certain points?
Excellent question. The way you took it is really, really very beautiful. I'm talking about in a different way that the pre-appointed times are the time release capsule of history. History is a time release capsule that was programmed already before history, so that the events are pre-appointed and points in time, but they were already, the characters and the events were already. So basically from this, according to this teaching, free will is almost blanked out for the moment.
Where's free will in all this?
It's okay, free will come back. Right now we're doing what is normally not taken. Usually the 99% is we deal with you and me and what I did and what I've done wrong, and oh my God, I got to do Yom Kippur, right? But there's this other reality which is much bigger, which is God's omniscience. So we're entering into that realm now, and it's not usually talked about in high school. Okay. But it's fun, so I thought we would share it.
I feel like it's a reality very much in this kufa we're in right now, that you kind of have this feeling of this pre-appointed thing, like no matter what you're doing, the train's going there, like whether you like it or not. So it's more of a reality now than maybe other times in history.
It's heavy. Again, we're going to come back to that they're both true. I have total free will and I have total responsibility, and yet I'm totally in God's hands. It's not 50-50, it's 100-100. Try and figure that one out. Right? It's all God and it's all us.
Could it be that when it says pre-appointed, could it be just that it's right to have to happen at that time? I mean, like if it were to happen, it would happen at that moment. But it's not forced to happen. It's not a given that it has to happen. It's just that, like, a tree ripens at a certain time. It can only happen at that time, but it doesn't happen to happen at that time.
Very, very nice.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll have to keep open to the possibility that it had to happen at that particular time, in that particular place, in that particular person. Even though what you're trying to do is you're trying to kind of massage it a little bit and open it up, it could be that they're both true. That's the problem, and that's also the gift of these teachings, is it opens up to possibilities. Okay, so we're back on the page, and it says, just to finish the top paragraph, there's a pre-appointed time for Noah to enter the ark and a pre-appointed time for him to depart. A pre-appointed time for every purpose under the heaven. There was a pre-appointed time for the Torah to be given to Israel. Rabbi Bibi said he's really basically repeating what was just said, but in a much more expanded way. There was a pre-appointed time for the Torah, which transcends the heavens, to become manifest within or be within space-time. The Maharal says on this, you don't have this, just he adds a little simple little note. Events recorded these events that were recorded in the Midrash were too laden with consequences to have just happened by chance. It's unthinkable that events which are essential to and which will profoundly affect the entire history of the world could have happened randomly. Rather, everything is a part of a grand order, the interconnectedness of which is so breathtaking that it cannot have come about by chance. Okay. So there's a pre-appointed time for events to happen, and certainly for big, huge collective events. Interesting. Okay, that's opening us up now to that the Jewish, the Torah, the Israelite view of history is a mixture of predeterminism and free will, right? Very interesting. There's a predetermined rendezvous at the end with God. The example given is that there's a play on the stage, and that there's this big auditorium, and there's this group of people down in this front seats, and they're looking at this play. It's a very intense play, and people come in and come out in the back, and they make noise, and the people in the front rows, shh. And the people in the back say, well, it's a meaningless play. It doesn't make any sense. And the people in the front row say, you weren't here for the last play, for the last scene before this one. You can't understand this scene unless you saw the scene before. We're here for the whole thing until the end. We want to see the author come out, make a curtain call. So that's the idea of staying in history and yet being not a part of it, and yet also knowing that we're waiting for one thing and one thing only, which is the manifestation of the higher level into this lower level. Okay, the bottom of the page that you have. Yosef was brought down to Mitzrayim. This is what is meant by come see the works, the operations of Elohim. He is awesome in bringing libel on the children of men. Rabbi Yeshua ben Korcha explained, even those events which you, God, bring upon us, you bring them with alila. You blame us. It's not fair. When the Holy One created the world, on the first day, he created the angel of death. How do we know this? It's written, the earth was tohu vabohu, and darkness was on the face of the earth, on the face of the deep. This darkness is the angel of death, who darkens the face of all creatures. Death. Man was created on the sixth day, and yet an alila was hung on him, nitlabo in Hebrew, nitla, hung on him. You're hanging it on me as if I did it, was that he was the one who brought death to the world. As it says in the verse, on the day that you eat from it, from the tree, you will die. It's really not it's not a scientific meaning of the verse. The Midrash is using the verse and molding it to its purpose. It definitely does not want to go into what the simple meaning of the verse is. On the day that you shall eat it, you shall die. It says, no, you will bring death into the world. So the Midrash goes on and says, this is again radical analogy, mashal. To what can this be compared? That Adam was in a situation where he ate from the tree symbolically, and now he's being told, you brought death into the world. It can be compared to a man who wished to divorce his wife. Before entering his home, he writes a get, a bill of divorce. He enters the house with the get in his hand under his coat. He seeks an alibi, an excuse to give it to her. He says, pour me a cup and give me a cup of coffee. And she pours it, and he takes it, and he takes a little sip, and he says, here's your get. What did I do wrong? Get out of my house. You poured me a cold cup of coffee. Well, you knew that I would pour you a lukewarm cup, and that's why you wrote a get, and you brought it with you. It's just a setup. So this is what's the radical here, is that Adam is saying to God, in the next paragraph, you created the world, but you had the Torah with you for 2,000 years, again symbolic, before you created the world. And in the Torah, it's written, a man when he dies in the tent. So you've created death even before I was ever around. And you're hanging it on me? You're awesome in the way you put it on me, what you yourself did. Now you could say here, so this is official midrash. It's not hidden anywhere. But it is hidden because most people don't know what to do with it. Like, hello, you can't say these things. God is the only one who's right, and we're wrong. And what happened to you? This is Judaism. We're supposed to feel guilty, right? So Judaism is revealing to us that we have this amazing relationship with God. We can call him on his actions. And then he enlightens us and he says, I'm glad you called me on my action. Now let me tell you why I really did what I did. And when you really understand it, I want you to know that I did it for you. The analogy that works best for me is the master movie maker. He makes a movie that in the middle of the movie, the events and the scenes in the movie and the characters that are going through it are really having a hard time. And they don't want to be where they are. The end of the movie, act 3, scene 3, whatever, the author comes out into the film and it's like a whole epiphany, and everything is understood. And we say, oh, can we see that movie again and again and again until we get it? And we say, oh my God, you did that for us. You created this whole illusion so that we could have a stage upon which that our souls could come down from the higher realms, which is the ultimate sacrifice of losing God consciousness to come down into a world where there's no God consciousness. Right? Abraham going down to Egypt, Israel going down to Egypt. All these are symbolic, right, of the fall of the high souls into space-time and the loss of amnesia. Amnesia comes from the Hebrew Menashe, Nishia. Menashe is named because Nashani Elohim at the Beit Avi. My Hashem has allowed me to forget what my brothers did to me. Yosef says. So Nishia, amnesia. That's what this world is. And yet we're supposed to come to consciousness within this world.
How are we able to we understand that, but that doesn't. There's no experience behind the understanding.
Yes, there is. It's coming from experience of people who had the experience, who were taken up above, and who came down and communicated to us something of what it's basically, it's said about a prophet that he can communicate to himself 10% of what he experienced, then he can only communicate to others, then 10% of that. So they need 1%. So, but the experience itself is buried within these words, and we can recreate it. Of course, not just through words, but I need the words. Teachings for us are our connection to the consciousness that existed before the great falls that happened. There were a number of falls in history. So we don't even have any conception anymore. Most people have no conception of what it was like when prophecy existed. But those of us who want to remember it and who are yearning for it, and who are told that as you get further away from Sinai, you get further away from prophecy, but as you get closer to the Mashiach, you get closer to prophecy. So we're not looking back anymore, man. We're looking forward. We want to get closer to that level of consciousness that once existed, but have it in the way that we need it. So just to tell you that one point that you made, I believe that there's experience, and I know that information is not to cloud and bury the experience. It's to give me the necessary knowledge that I need to then work with it on the inside. But that's not all of what you wanted to ask, but that's what I got so far. So this thing in the middle, this paragraph in the middle, I skipped some words and I added them in the commentary, the translation. I'd like to go through it just a little bit forward with you again. Thus Adam spoke to the Holy One, Master of the universe, before you created the world, which corresponds to verses in Proverbs and other places, meaning to say the world is made with 7 lower sphirot. 7 days of creation correspond to 7 lower sphirot. Sorry. So you have this come on. This diagram here of the 7 lower sphirot in the lower triangle and the higher 3 sphirot. So, and you see that there's this dotted line that comes in from the higher triangle and goes into and becomes like the hand in the glove, I call it, in the lower triangle. So this is the inner level that goes down and is the behind the scenes behind. The 7 lower sphirot are called Hanhagata Mishpat, the mode of Elohim, or the mode of justice, the school of hard knocks, where things seem to go wrong. It's Kafka's castle. It's the chambers of exchanges where you get sidetracked everywhere every time you want to get close to the truth. But on the holidays are said that we get lifted up to the higher places. Bina especially. This here is Bina. Bina is the 8th sphere from below, which is also 7 times 7 down here. So it's also the 50th, the level of 50. And so we come from above and we come into space-time, into the lower seven. So above is called Chochmah and Bina, and certainly Keter, is where the plan is formulated, the plan of creation. On the first verse in Bereshit, the Targum Yerushalmi says, Bereshit bara Elohim, says, B'chochmata, with wisdom. Reshit, because there's a verse in Proverbs that says, Reshit Chochmah, the beginning of wisdom, or the head of wisdom, the first thing of wisdom is Yirat Hashem, whatever, but Reshit and Chochmah are connected. So Bereshit becomes B'chochmah. Wisdom means there's a plan. Then the plan becomes now down at the place where we make the building and we create the world, it becomes hidden within the actual elements of creation. Like I have an idea, it's a blueprint, and I come to the building site, the construction site, and I build the building. Now, if you go into the building and you look at the way I built it, I made it in such a way that you can work backwards from the faucet in the kitchen, in the closet in the bedroom, in the bed, the way you can work backwards to the idea that I had in mind, which is the chokhmah level, the plan. So this world is made in such a way that we can follow it backwards to the thought of the Creator and connect to that thought. So the 2,000 years that the Torah preceded creation are called Chokhmah and Bina. That's all I'm trying to say here. Yeah.
When you're davening, do you have a chance? Is that some of the experiences to look into that higher zone? Because he spoke about. Is that something that's available on, or only on the Chagim?
No, very much so. It's available. It's something we should all work for. I just read in the Tikkun Zohar yesterday that the right brain and the left brain are married to each other, and that there's an opening in the left brain to allow the right brain to interpenetrate it. That's called a yichud of Yud and Hey, a yichud of Chochmah and Bina, of Abba and Ima. This is an internal experience that when I'm saying the words of the prayers, or I'm in that deep state, whether it's silent or with the prayers themselves, or just wherever I am, I can tune into that and I can be in that place inside myself. I'm just learning, but I know that it exists and I know that it changes my life. So Chochmah and Bina are a real factor, but they're above the normal of this world. This world, so to speak, is a body without a head. The world to come is called Olam Haba, is the head. And of course, the brain, the nervous system goes into the body. So our job is to detect the presence of high spirituality within the physical and to elevate the physical to become one complete unified system. Before you created the world, corresponding to the 7 lower sefirot, the Torah was hidden with you for 2,000 years, symbolically, not just, there's nothing to do with time here. It has to do with Chochmah and Bina, each becoming symbolically 1,000, which is the divine plan that preceded the world. So before you created the world as we know it, there was something going on beforehand. And he brings a verse from Proverbs where the Torah speaks, as it is written, I was with him then. I, the Torah, divine Bina or Chochmah, was with the Ein Sof then. His Amun, his secret blueprint, hidden divine plan. I was his delight, Sha'ashu'im, Yom Yom. I was his delight day after day, constantly frolicking before him. This is a bunch of verses in Proverbs 30 that actually went to the trouble of, over the years, I translate here, I translate there. When I get a chance, I complete the translation. Very interesting. Hashem created me, the Torah, as the genesis of his way. Proverbs chapter 8. The first of his works of old. I was set up from eternity, from the beginning, before the earth was conceived. When there were still no depths, I was brought forth. When there were yet no pools gushing with water. Before the mountains were imprinted, before the hills were conceived, I was brought forth. Before he made the earth and its exterior, or the first dust of the inhabited world. When he was preparing the heavens, I was there. When he engraved a chug, I didn't know how to translate that, whatever, on the face of the waters. When he fortified the stratospheres above. When he strengthened the well springs of the deep. When he set a limit for the sea, so that its waters would never transgress his word. When he engraved the foundations of the earth. I was with him. His blueprint, his divine plan. I was his delight, Yom Yom, constantly frolicking before him, playing with the universe, his earth. The children of men were my delights. And the Midrash, the beginning, the actual first entry in Midrash Rabbah Reshit says, HaTorah Omeret, the Torah says, Ani haiti kli umanuto shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I was the Holy One's kli umanuto, the tool of his craft. B'noheg sheba'olam, normally, melech basav adam bonei pelatim, a human king builds a palace. Eno bonei ota midat atzmo, ela midat oman. He doesn't build it according to his own conception. Rather, he confers with an oman, a craftsman. Strange, I say, my God. But even the oman doesn't build it according to his own conception. Rather, he has blueprints, which it uses the Greek word, is called here dipraot, which the commentary says yiri'ah shel klaf. It's a large piece of skin that's written on umitsuyerim alav surot shonot shel binyanim, and is diagrammed on it different forms of buildings. So that's what a blueprint is. So even the Oman doesn't build it according to his own conception. Rather, he has blueprints and notebooks to check how to make all the rooms. So the Bereshit Rabbah 1:1, all in this idea that the Torah speaks in Proverbs chapter 8 and says, I was with him from the beginning. So the Torah speaks definitely metaphorically, but through the metaphor you can get that the divine wisdom is intrinsic to the whole process of creation. Since the Torah was with God in Chokhmah and Bina level 2,000 years before, so how can it be written in the Torah that if a man dies in the tent and you're still blaming me for death? So that's where it goes here, at the bottom of the paragraph in the middle of the page. Isn't it written, Zot Torah Adam ki yamud b'ohel? In this week's Parsha, this is the Torah of Adam when he will die in the tent. If you hadn't already programmed death into creation, would you have written this in the Torah? You would bring a libel, an accusation against me to blame me that I'm the one who brought death into the world. This is the meaning of you are awesome in bringing libel upon the children of men. So this goes on now with Moses, and then with Yosef, bringing the children of Israel into Egypt was also, and that's where the Midrash takes us. It takes us to this strange way of thinking that this world is not a fair world, and that the way God made it is unfair, and it leaves us with that. Comes this amazing teacher, the Leshem, and he puts it all together. He quotes all his sources, and I left it in Hebrew, and forgive me. Before we started, forgive me because I didn't translate it, but we'll translate every word. Before we start, though, let's just sit back for a second, and you can ask. I can try and field any questions, and we can also kind of just sit in ourselves and allow what we just said to settle in. We've just gone through a grand rapids of ideas. So now it's like a little bit of relaxation is needed. The answer will come as to what to do with all this. In the meantime, relax your mind, breathe. Be aware of yourself sitting here as in your physical body, and just really just open up your head, open up your heart. Who brought us to this room? Eliyahu Navi. Who's saying things like this? Who can deal with ideas such as this? And yet we want to know something is here, some kernel that each one of us has to take. I call it being able to make peace with God. Come to shalom. I look at my life, where I was born, my mom, my dad, the house I grew up in, my brothers, the schools that I went to, the bicycle that I had, the limitations I grew up with, my psychological personal makeup of my being, the pain that I had, thoughts that I had, feelings that I had. That's all part of a story, right, that was given to me to live. So I hope each one of you can go and connect with your own story and know that the reason we've been brought here is to come now into a conscious relationship with our own story. That's what this lifetime is about. So when you talk to Hashem, you're talking from your story, you're talking from what you know about yourself, and you're saying, please let me wake up from this lifetime. Because I know that I'm more than what I was born. I know that you gave me this lifetime for a reason. I can accept it. And perhaps some of the details are a little problematic for me in what I did then and what I've done since. But in general, I can handle. But now, in order for it to really come to where it needs to come to, and for your people and for your world and for humanity in its totality, we need to get to the next level. Please, Hashem. So with your permission, the last bottom, on page 3, the bottom paragraph, the first paragraph is basically all the midrashim that he quoted. And now he starts and says, it's clear to us from all the midrashim, all these midrashim, bottom of page 3, all the events, that in the Torah is given the reason for the events. Abraham was given a vision called Brita bin Abitarim, and he was told that your children will be strangers, subject to another nation for 400 years. They'll be in servitude, etc. And in the Torah, the simple reason for it is that he asked, well, how will I know that my children will inherit the land? How will I know? So Hashem's answer was, Yadoa Tada, you'll know. You'll have to go down to another place first in order for your children. And it sounded like almost on the surface, I'm like, just because I asked, like, what did I do wrong? And all of a sudden you're telling me that my children have to suffer. So there are those who deal with the Maharal, the Ramchal. There's this very strange interaction and this vision that he has of exiles, of his progeny going through difficult times. So the reason is given in the Torah, and there are other examples where the reason is given. Moshe hits the rock, and Hashem says, 3 strikes, you're out. You're out of the game. You cannot go and take this children of Israel into the land of Israel. You hit the rock. Whoa. I just did one little thing. And you're like, I took one little rock out of the mountain and the whole mountain avalanched. And you're blaming the avalanche on me. That's the proportion here is like out of proportion. So when the Torah tells you why something happened, even when it does, second line, Hine hasiba rishona, but the first and primordial reason why this event is happening, of why this thing is happening, Hu rak b'gzera, it's only from divine decree that preceded creation. Vehen hameoraot, therefore the events themselves, vehen hasibot, and the reasons why they happen within the framework of space-time, hem kulam misitre hanhagata yitbarach shemo. They all of them root back up into a higher mystery level that precedes our universe. V'hem kvushim, it's a layer hidden with him. Etzlo, me'az mikedem, from then and from back. Shu mikodem shenivra olam, which is from before the world was created. והוא הכל מסיבת עולם הנקודות ומיתתם ושבירתם וכל מה שנעשה בהם בעולם התוהו. Now, we learned for 4 weeks or so about the shattering of the vessels. Doesn't mean we understand it, but we learned about it. It's chapter 10 of Inner Space. All I can tell you here is what he says in words is all that's happening here in our world is as a result of what happened in what we call the shattering. The shattering was a purposeful process that was brought forth. And when we use the word programming, that it programmed into the fabric of existence that there were 7 shatterings, and there will be 6,000 years leading to a 7th millennium, and that when we get out of the 6,000 years into the 7th millennium, then we will start getting to that level of existence that existed before the shattering, so that we'll see that everything that came down from the higher levels, and at a certain point there was a shattering that produced the world that we live in, that the home trip, the trek homewards, is following the same track back, but consciously, until we get out of the spree field of this particular place in the universe that we're holding at, which was purposely set up as a place where we'd have to go through very difficult tests, and we're going to go into freedom. And we're going to look back and say, whoa, what was that? Why did we have to go through that? The Creator's plan was that we had to be part of putting the universe back together again from its shattering. So that's what he just said. The end of the 4th line, Ki ba'olam hanikudot, because in the world that preceded our world, called Olam hanikudot, the world of individual points. In other words, before that it was Olam ha'akudim, as we spoke about, the world of unity that preceded the breakdown. So in the world of breakdown, Yatsa kol hashorashim, came forth all of the roots, the ontological roots, I call them, kol ma shaya atid letzet, of everything that will eventually come out, b'kol adalat olamot atzilut bria yitzira asiyah, all things would come out in all 4 spiritual worlds, klalehem upirtehem b'pirtei pratut, their general aspects as well as their details of their details, hayoter acharon, to the last detail, Hashem me'olam ve'adonam, from the highest world to the lowest world, v'yahaya yitziatam misod ha'machshava elyon de'adam kadmon shua chochmatas tima'a shebo. It's crazy to do this to you, but all of this was part of a plan that originates in the mind of God, in the mind of the Ein Sof, at a level called Adam Kadmon, chochmatas tima'a, the hidden, concealed chochma. Which again, Chokhmah indicates plan, total, omniscient overseeing of everything that will ever happen within mind, with capital M. So that what happens below are all subsystems within an unfolding of a plan, an original plan. And that the creator or the emanator decided on this plan as opposed to another plan which would have not involved the shattering. And he or it made a decision that this would be the better plan in the end. So that's close. Again, to speak this in public and to speak it in a public forum and to say these things in such, trying to translate it and all that is almost like it doesn't go. This is not it. I apologize for that. On the other hand, we're trying to give over an idea that could probably better be given over in a movie. This is what movies are made for, is to give over the idea of a pre-existing civilization with sentient beings in it who are planning the next stage, right? And that the next stage would have no awareness of the previous stage. But at a certain point in the evolution of the lower level, they would communicate from above, and they become aware, that the whole reason that they went down is in order to bring everything back up to the higher level, something that the higher level couldn't have done on its own. I'm just trying to, spinning out a possible way of understanding higher and lower here. Main word is chokhmah, is plan, divine plan. blueprint, complete unity behind the brokenness. And the plan involves that we begin to discover the unity within the brokenness, which is something that even angels can't do. Because we came down into Mitzrayim, into the world of double binds and narrow straits, in order to be able to go to the highest. It's hard. The middle of the movie is not easy. The end of the movie even, right? When the forces all come together on the planet and everything tries to stop, just like at 12 o'clock noon in the Garden of Eden, there was the entry of the Nachash into, which then effectively caused a dent in creation. Adam lost it. So now we're back at 12 o'clock or 12:30 afternoon of history, of Friday afternoon of history. We're back. There's 7 billion of us, and we are given these stories, this Torah, and some of us can try and start to get it. We came from outside of the Torah world. We weren't born in it, or those of us who were born in it left it. Anybody was saying. And then we come back in it with a little bit of experience from the outside world, and we say, what is this thing? You know, there's rabbis, and there's this, and there's halacha, but there's this story, right? And there's this godly plan that's unfolding, and I'm just as much a part of it as anybody else. And that means that my whole life takes on a divine cosmic aspect. That's incredible just to be able to contemplate that. A little bit more inside, with your permission. That's all I can do. And we're not going to finish it this week. Anybody who wants to come back, you're certainly welcome. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines from the top. 5 words in. At that high level of the chokhmata stima, the hidden concealed chokhmah of Adam Kadmon, the emanator was, if it can be said, thinking thoughts. Right? That's all simple. Choshev machshavot. Al kol abriya, on the entire creation, kula in its entirety. Ech liyasda ulamsiya, how to establish it and bring it forth. V'chen b'chol tahaluchot hanhagata, and also was thinking of all its unfoldings of its governance, how he was going to govern and oversee everything that happened bichlal bifrat, in generalities and in details. Mereshit shorsha ad sof tachlita, from the highest level down to the lowest, the entire universe in one complete thought. V'shama yatzofeu mabit alakol, from there he oversaw and looked down on everything. It hadn't happened yet. And from there, from that machshava stima, from that hidden thought of the emanator, everything came forth with ratzon, which is not just will, which is favor and grace. And b'machshava, and with thought, which is plan, ub'gzera, which is decree. From him, may he be blessed. That was on that decree was on the entire world of chaos that was purposely shattered in order to prepare for our world. And then all the events that would be born from this, that would involve all 6,000 years of history as we know it. So we hold that the 6,000 years starts from Adam. Human time starts from Adam, and even then it wasn't exactly what it is now, but basically time becomes more what we know it after Adam. Before Adam, it's not human time, and we're not talking about that. And we hold that after the 6th millennium ends, which is where we're more than 3/4 through it, that time will again become qualitatively different. So the world that we live in, and the time, the space that we live in, the kind of world we live in, the molecular structure of this world is unique to this period. It was only in order to create a stage for our souls to come down and to go through this story, for this movie. Second to last line. And from his overseeing and his visioning, Sham, there, Bisoda Machshava Yana, and the mystery of the supernal thought, Yatzak Kol Olaman Nikudot. It's from there that the shattering came forth, and it was the decision was made that in order to create the possibility of humanity, there has to be this breakdown of my light. There's too much light here. This is what we mentioned, and we'll stop here. This is too much is too much. What we mentioned when we showed you this. Yeah, is this this idea of the 6 days of creation: first day, second day, third day, fourth day, fifth day, sixth day, and that something happened wrong every day on purpose in order to phase out more light each time to create the possibility of a world where people could have existence and free will. So that what we've tried to do, and there's only one thing we tried, one idea here, is we tried to go up into the thought of the Ein Sof as to why he created the world as he did. It's a broken world. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall, and all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty Dumpty back together again. Why would the horses be involved? The horses are the laws of nature. The king's men are the angels. Neither they or them can put the Humpty Dumpty, the wholeness, back together again after the shattering. That is the job of the souls. That's above the angels and above the laws of nature. That's our connection direct to the Creator, right? The download that we can download is of a nature that cannot be conceived by any other creature in the world. We are unique. But that in order to do that, we have to connect on the inner pipelines of our soul. This knowledge was given to us to help us know that there is something to connect to. It's a very, even though it, whatever might not come from one particular class, but it's a very joyous thing, because the opening up to the higher universe of what Hashem wants to give us ultimately puts what we're in here and now as a little tiny bubble that we were brought into for a purpose. And if so, it's like Rav Zusha said, if God tells me that when I get to heaven to go and jump into hell, I'll gird my loins and I'll jump down there, because to serve the Creator, I will go anywhere, which is exactly what the shattering of the vessels and the falling of the sparks and the whole disaster is, the conscious taking on ourselves from above the mission of creating the possibility of going down into a world where God is hidden. That was the ultimate sacrifice. And for that sacrifice, when we do come back into consciousness, this is an incredible gain. And we'll look back and we'll say, thank you. Now it's very hard for some of us, but even now we can start to say thank you. It's amazing what the opportunity has been given to us. So again, this system of knowledge, with all of the difficulties that it presents, is a consistent, coherent system that goes very, very high in its own way. Maybe it can meet other systems on the planet that speak of similar things. I don't know. I only talk within this system. But it does have a coherency, a beauty, a symmetry, a meaning. And therefore, it gives me a way of living in this world with a purpose and a mission. And with the actual sense of shalom, that I'm going to have the ability, eventually, even if I don't have it now, to understand, to be there with God, to know that everything is God. So,
Rav Sutton, is it fair to say that every time a neshama comes into the world, it's like a little mini shattering that happens every time? Because the neshama is in a place of consciousness, and then it gets put into this physicality, so it's like it gets taken.
So it's like it's really children. There's nothing like a little baby that's born, and the joy that we have, and yet, in terms of soul, yes, there's a loss of consciousness there, but we have to look at it from the other point of view. From down here, there's another soul coming down to enlighten us. There's the teaching in the Ari that there are souls that were put aside that are waiting for the end of the 6th millennium to come in and to save the rest of us. Higher souls. They're coming into our children now. They're coming into us. They come in what's called Ibor. They come in when they find a fitting vessel, somebody who's just yearning for the higher light and who wants to serve the Creator. So there they find it's not a debuk, it's not a negative force. It's a win-win situation where higher souls come into us and they win and we win. In other words, they jump our evolution to a higher level, and they themselves get the from giving of such a thing they get. You always get so much more when you give. So our job with our souls and with whatever is helping us is that we now are involved in perfection of the world, and therefore our giving together is something that allows us to become givers.
That's the process that can take place. We're already in this world, and you can actually bring down that's bringing down energy of another soul into you.
Definitely. Yeah. If you want to, you can meditate, and I call out in my mind the name of my father, my mother, my oldest brother passed away. I go to some of the names of the teachers I've had who have passed away, who I've known in this lifetime. Just the name itself resonates. It's a vibratory thing. It's my thought of them. I don't dwell on each one. I just call out the name one after the other slowly in my mind. I got back to those who I didn't know in this lifetime. I get back to Abraham and Sarah, Rivka, Adam, Moshe, all the generations that are together up there. There's no, I don't have to go in any time chronology. When I'm standing there with them, I know in that dimension, there's no walls between the generations. They're all together. They all know each other, and they all know me, and they all know all of us. That's a very nice place to die. It's all imagination, but you're using whatever you know from near-death experiences. There's a whole literature of near-death. There's experiences. There's descriptions. And there's one book in Tel Aviv by a very special guy named Yitzhak. It's been a while. Forgot his name. It's called Chaim Shalachar Mavet, Life After Death, but it's not a translation of an English book. It's homegrown. Beautiful stuff, beautiful stories. And one guy says, I went up and I was in a place that had no walls, and I saw all the people that I knew when I was growing up, and they all recognized me. And I was embarrassed because I had blood on me. I felt I had blood on me because his body was down on the ground and he was in an accident. And he heard the voice, and it was talking to him. And he was given a choice of life and death. And he was told that there was a woman that he could see in a far distance. She was also having her trial, so to speak. And he said, it's either you or her. And he said, take me. And they said, good, we'll take her. It's good that you said what you said. And when he came back, after a number of days, they recorded everything he said. And the things that he said, I have to do such and such. I promised somebody to do something for him. You have to fulfill your promises. That's part of being existence. So things that you get from every story that you read about and you apply it to your own spiritual life. Excuse me for going off on I just try and answer a question as fully as I can. And I could cry out loud. Yeah.
Did the man who wrote Humpty Dumpty know what he was writing? Or was it subconscious? Because they say all the nursery rhymes are very deep. You think he knew what he was writing?
I don't know. But it makes total sense to me.
What brings to mind to me is the lesson of to do and then to listen. It brings understanding and that bonding and connecting with others is those sparks.
So important. The scattering of the sparks. So the medication for it is the bonding. We are all sparks. 1,000 of us getting together. Is whatever. And now I don't believe so much in Facebook, but because it's a little bit, it's not really real for me. But this is something, and what we should make our shuls at, and what we should make our homes at, and our families, and our friends, and whatever parties we have. When you have a party, make it into a sacred space without forcing it on anybody. But let's do what we can to have holiness intermingle in our happiness and make right. This is what's the opportunity has been given to us. Come back to Yerushalayim. Do we have a guitar? Oh yeah, we have a guitar. Thank you so much for bringing your guitar.
Rabbi, when you mentioned about coming here tonight, and we found our way here. So Rabbi and I spoke this afternoon about how to get here. To get off whatever, I don't know what Simcha was near a health food store. So Devorah and I, we stayed at the hotel all day, and we took a cab to Ripas, and whatever, went around the sugar a little bit, and then we came out. I looked for the health food store. Now this is true. I went up to the health food store. I saw the health food store, and that's all I remember. I had everything written down, but all I remember was the health food store near Simcha. So I go in the health food store, and I'm sorry, what is your name? Rebecca. And now you tell me what happened here. So I go to a health food store, and the sugar is very busy. And I go in, and
You asked for the
I looked at Rebecca, and out of all the thousands of people in the shop, I looked at Rebecca and I said, "Where's Rachel Rabola?" She asked me, "Where are you going?" I said, "We're going to the yeshiva." She says, "I'm going there. Follow me." Whoa.
Yeah, meetings are just so divinely guided. It's time to stop being unconscious and to wake up, and where God is sitting right next to you, that kind of thing. Look at each other, look at everybody in this room, look at another human being. Look how amazing it is to be alive. Right? Let's allow ourselves to feel this. And Yonatan, go for it whenever you're ready. Yonatan.
No pressure.
No pressure. No, it'll just come through you. Baruch atah Adonai. A blessing to Shalom Brat, wherever he is now, Los Angeles or wherever, Montreal, and Hashem should give him tremendous insight, success. He should know that he's on a divine mission. Everybody here should be blessed. Go ahead.
The book after Literary Age Group. Is there another book after that? Can you bring it?
Soak it in. You say that one of the safest times to yearn for the redemption is the third meal. It's safe. It's you need to be in a safe place to yearn, because when it doesn't come the way you want it, then you get broken. Right? But if you're in a safe place and you can yearn, you know that whatever it is that's coming is exactly right. You just might not recognize it. And give me the ability to recognize it. Give us the eyes to see that you're bringing the redemption. Ku'el Goel Chazak. Your desire to bring redemption is nothing can derail it. Human beings, as much as they try and do to take over the planet, do anything they can. So we have to see things from above, from the bird's eye view of higher consciousness. But that we've been sent down here to become plants, agents of goodness, wherever we go. Bless us all and be connected to each other and to believe in each other, believe in the incredible power Hashem has given us as human beings, our hearts, our minds. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Rabbi, you mentioned Rabbi Cook. If I'm not mistaken, Sunday is his York side. York side is on Sunday. There's a counselor on the board across from I think it's